There is a certain kind of darkness that thrives in wide open spaces, a silence that settles over vast, empty landscapes and allows old whispers to grow louder. Texas is a state built on such spaces. It's a land of sprawling cities and endless highways. But in between them lie dusty roads, forgotten towns, but patches of wilderness that hold memories the modern world has tried to pave over. They say everything is bigger in Texas. The sky, the ambitions, the legends, and the shadows. Tonight, we are not interested in the well-lit streets of Dallas or the bustling crowds of Austin. We are venturing into those shadows. We will be exploring 5 unsettling accounts, rooted in the soil of the Lone Star State. These are stories drawn from eyewitness reports, historical records, and local legends so persistent they have become a part of the landscape itself. They are presented as they have been told, as true and unflinching accounts of the disturbing and the unexplained. So lower the lights and settle in. Our journey begins on a lonely bridge in the heart of Denton County. Our first story concerns a place known to locals as Old Alton Bridge. To an outsider, it's just an old, historic iron truss bridge, decommissioned decades ago, now a quiet part of a trail system. But to those who grew up in the area, it has another name, Goatman's Bridge. The story, like many such tales, has fractured into different versions over the years, but the most common one begins in the late 1930s. They say a man named Oscar Washburn lived near the bridge with his family. He was an African-American entrepreneur, a successful goat farmer known in the community for the high-quality milk and cheese he produced. He was a proud man, and in a time and place of deep-seated prejudice, his success bred resentment. Local Klansmen, angered by his prosperity, decided to make an example of him. One night, they dragged him from his home, his family screaming in protest, and took him to the bridge. They tied a noose around his neck and, without a second thought, threw him over the side. When they looked down to confirm their grim work was done, they saw only the rope, swaying gently, the noose empty. In a panic, they went down to the creek bed, but Oscar Washburn was gone. His body was never found. Terrified and enraged, the Klansmen returned to his home and slaughtered his wife and children in their beds. The official record of such an event is, unsurprisingly, non-existent. But history is written by the victors, and local memory often holds truths that paper ignores. The legend says that the spirit of Oscar Washburn, now a vengeful entity, haunts the bridge and the surrounding woods. But he didn't return as himself. He returned as something else, something monstrous. A creature with the head of a goat and the body of a man, his soul twisted by hatred and grief. For decades, people have dared each other to visit the bridge at night. The rules are simple. Drive to the bridge, turn off your car and your lights, and honk your horn 3 times. Then you wait. Many who have performed this ritual report nothing but the unsettling silence of the Texas night. But others have stories. A group of college students in the late 90s decided to test the legend. They followed the instructions, honking 3 times into the oppressive darkness. For a few minutes, nothing happened. They started to laugh it off, feeling foolish, when they heard a sound from the bridge itself. A heavy, rhythmic thump, thump, thump. It sounded like someone was walking across the wooden planks, but with an unnatural weight. Then, a low growl echoed from the far side of the bridge, a guttural sound that vibrated in their chests. Suddenly, a large, dark shape rose up at the other end of the bridge, silhouetted against the faint moonlight. It was impossibly tall, and even from a distance, they could make out a horned profile. They didn't wait to see more. The driver frantically started the car, tires squealing on the gravel as they sped away. As they looked in the rearview mirror, they saw the figure take a step towards where they had just been, before melting back into the shadows. Another, more recent account from a pair of ghost hunters tells of recording electronic voice phenomena, or EVP, on the bridge. They asked, "Is there anyone here with us?" And upon reviewing the audio later, they heard a clear, raspy voice whisper a single word, "Leave." Later that night, as they were packing up their equipment, they heard the distinct sound of hooves clattering on the iron trusses above them. They looked up, but saw nothing. The sound circled them, moving from the bridge to the woods beside them, always just out of sight. They also reported finding strange, cloven hoof prints in the soft earth by the creek the next morning, prints that belonged to no known native animal. The most chilling stories, however, are not just about sounds and shadows. They are about direct encounters. A young couple who had parked their car near the bridge reported a sudden, violent shaking of their vehicle. They looked out the window and saw a terrifying face staring back at them, a face that was half man, half goat, with glowing, malevolent eyes. They claimed it let out a roar of pure rage before disappearing into the trees. They were so shaken that they drove directly to the Denton police station, their story dismissed as a prank or a hallucination. But they maintained, with absolute conviction, that what they saw was real. The Goatman of Old Alton Bridge remains one of Texas's most enduring legends, a grim reminder that some injustices create wounds so deep, they fester in the land itself, birthing monsters from the memory of pain. The safety of our children. This is the story of the Candy Lady. Unlike the Goatman, this legend is tied directly to a real, documented tragedy that horrified the nation. In 1974, a man in Pasadena, Texas named Ronald Clark O'Brien poisoned his own son by giving him a pixie sticks laced with cyanide on Halloween night. His motive was to collect on a life insurance policy. The act was so heinous he was nicknamed the Candy Man and was executed for his crime. This horrific, real-life event acted as a dark seed, from which a more supernatural urban legend grew in the nearby town of Texas City. The legend speaks of a woman named Clara Crane, who lived in the early 1900s. The story goes that her own son was killed in a tragic accident, run over by a carriage right in front of their house. The grief shattered Clara's mind. She began making candy, taffy, caramels, chocolates, and leaving it on her windowsill to lure local children inside, hoping one of them could replace the child she had lost. But when they came, her broken mind would twist, and she would harm them, burying their bodies in her yard. The legend says that she would sometimes embed foreign objects into the candy she made, needles, shards of glass, a way of sharing her pain with the world. Eventually, the townspeople discovered what she was doing and, in an act of vigilante justice, hanged her from a bridge. But her malevolent spirit, they say, never left. The story of Clara Crane, the Candy Lady, is almost certainly a fabrication, a local ghost story that has borrowed elements from real-world tragedies. But for decades, residents of Texas City and the surrounding areas have sworn to strange occurrences that they attribute to her ghost. The stories often revolve around a specific, unsettling detail, finding candy in places it shouldn't be. A family who moved into an old house in the 2000s reported finding antique candy wrappers tucked away in the walls during a renovation. They thought nothing of it until their young daughter began talking about a nice lady who would visit her at night and leave her sweets on her nightstand. The parents assumed she was dreaming, until one morning, they found a single, unwrapped piece of saltwater taffy on their daughter's pillow. It was stale and hard as a rock. They had no such candy in the house, and their daughter swore the Candy Lady had given it to her. They moved out less than 6 months later. Another tale comes from a group of teenagers who were exploring an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town, a place long rumored to be the Candy Lady's original home. They found the place in ruins, floors rotting and walls crumbling. But in one of the back rooms, sitting on a dusty, decaying windowsill, was a small, pristine box of chocolates. It looked brand new. Despite their bravado, none of them dared to touch it. As they were leaving, they heard what sounded like a woman humming a lullaby from one of the upstairs windows. They ran and didn't look back. The most frightening accounts are those that seem to confirm the legend's most gruesome detail. A man claims that when he was a child in the 1980s, he was trick-or-treating with friends. An old, unlit house that was supposed to be vacant had its porch light on. When they approached, the door creaked open, and a hand, wrinkled and pale, extended a bowl of homemade popcorn balls. He took one, and later that night, as he was about to eat it, he noticed something glinting inside. He broke it open and found a rusty sewing needle embedded deep within the popcorn. Whether it was a cruel prankster or something more sinister, he never found out. The story of the Candy Lady serves as a local boogeyman, a cautionary tale for children. But it's a story made all the more terrifying because it's rooted in a real-world horror, blurring the line between ghost story and a grim warning that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are ordinary people. Our third destination is far from the humidity of the coast, out in the vast, high desert of West Texas, near the quirky arts town of Marfa. Here, the threat is not a vengeful spirit or a monstrous creature, but something more subtle, more mysterious, and perhaps more unsettling. We're talking about the Marfa Lights. For over a century, people have reported seeing strange, inexplicable lights dancing on the horizon just outside of town. They are described as basketball-sized spheres of light, glowing in colors ranging from white and yellow to red, blue, and green. They don't behave like any known light source. They hover, they dart across the desert at incredible speeds, they merge together, they split apart, and sometimes, they simply vanish into thin air. The first documented sighting dates back to 1883, when a young cattleman named Robert Reed Ellison saw flickering lights while driving his herd. He assumed they were from Apache campfires, but was told by local settlers that they had been seeing the lights for years, and no one had ever found a campsite, an ash heap, or any other evidence of fires where the lights appeared. Since then, thousands of people have witnessed them, from World War II pilots training at a nearby airbase to modern-day tourists who gather at a designated viewing station every night, hoping for a glimpse. Skeptics, of course, have tried to explain them away for decades. The most common explanation is that they are simply atmospheric distortions of car headlights from a nearby highway, U.S. Route 67. But this explanation has serious flaws. The lights were seen long before cars or highways existed in the area. Furthermore, studies have shown that the highway is not visible from many of the key vantage points where the lights are most frequently reported. Other theories include swamp gas or piezoelectric charges from shifting rock, but none of these fully account for the light's complex and seemingly intelligent behavior. The truly disturbing nature of the Marfa Lights comes from the stories of those who have tried to get a closer look. One account, from the 1970s, tells of two sheriff's deputies who saw the lights while on patrol. Believing them to be trespassers, they drove their car off-road and headed directly towards the glowing spheres. They said that as they got closer, the lights seemed to react to their presence, moving away from them, almost playfully. They chased them for miles across the rough desert terrain. At one point, one of the spheres reportedly shot straight up into the sky at an impossible speed and disappeared. The other two zipped off to the left and right, vanishing over the horizon. When the deputies got out of their car, they found no tracks, no scorch marks, nothing. Just the eerie silence of the desert at night. A more personal and frightening story was shared by a woman who was camping alone in the area. She was watching the lights from a distance when she noticed one of them seemed to detach from the group on the horizon and move in her direction. It grew larger and brighter as it approached, moving silently over the scrub brush. It stopped about 100 yards from her campsite, hovering a few feet off the ground, bathing the area in a soft, pulsating white light. She was frozen in terror, unable to move or scream. She said she felt an overwhelming sense of being watched, of being studied. After what felt like an eternity, the light silently retreated, rejoining the others on the horizon before they all faded out. She packed up her camp in the dark and left, vowing never to return. What are these lights? Are they a natural phenomenon we don't yet understand? Are they the spirits of Spanish conquistadors, as one old legend suggests? Or are they something else entirely? Visitors to the official viewing area are often treated to a distant, beautiful, and silent light show. But those who venture out into the desert, who try to bridge the gap between observer and observed, sometimes come back with stories that are anything but beautiful. They speak of a silent, intelligent, and deeply unsettling presence that watches over the empty plains of West Texas. From the silent mystery of the desert, we travel to the heart of one of Texas's most vibrant cities, San Antonio. Amidst the cheerful crowds and bustling restaurants of the River Walk, a much older, much sadder story is told. It is the story of La Llorona, the Weeping Woman. This legend is a cornerstone of Hispanic folklore, told for centuries across the Americas, but in San Antonio, it has found a modern home. The legend of La Llorona tells of a beautiful woman named Maria who, in a fit of rage and despair after being scorned by her lover, drowned her own children in a river. Immediately consumed by guilt, she then drowned herself. But she was denied entry into the afterlife, condemned to roam the earth as a spirit, eternally searching for her lost children. Her mournful cry, "Ay, mis hijos, oh my children," is said to be a harbinger of death and misfortune. For generations, parents have used the story to scare their children into behaving. Don't stay out too late, or La Llorona will get you. But along the San Antonio River Walk, many believe it's more than just a scary story. Security guards, hotel staff, and late-night revelers have all reported experiences they can't explain. One of the most common reports is the sound. A security guard doing his rounds late one night, long after the tourists had gone, reported hearing the distinct sound of a woman weeping. It was coming from down by the water's edge, in a dimly lit section of the walk. He went to investigate, thinking it was someone in distress. As he got closer, the sobbing grew louder, filled with an anguish that he said made his blood run cold. He called out, asking if anyone needed help, and the sobbing stopped instantly. He scanned the area with his flashlight, but there was no one there. The area was completely deserted. Just as he was about to dismiss it as his imagination, he heard a faint whisper on the wind, a woman's voice that seemed to come from all around him, saying, "Mis hijos." Another account comes from a young couple who were taking a late-night stroll. They saw a woman dressed in a long, white gown standing by the river, her back to them. Her shoulders were shaking as if she were crying. Concerned, they approached her. The man gently touched her shoulder and asked if she was all right. She turned around slowly, and they saw a face that was not human. It was skeletal and decayed, with empty eye sockets that seemed to weep a dark, ethereal substance. She let out a horrifying shriek that echoed along the stone walls of the river, a sound of pure, unending agony. The couple screamed and ran, not stopping until they were back in the safety of their hotel room. Perhaps the most detailed account was given by a maintenance worker who was cleaning one of the pedestrian bridges that crossed the river in the pre-dawn hours. He saw a woman in white walking along the opposite bank. She seemed to glide rather than walk, and he noticed she had no reflection in the dark water below. He watched, mesmerized, as she stopped and looked down into the river. She then lifted her head to the sky and let out the mournful, wailing cry that legend describes. He said the sound was so full of sorrow that he felt an overwhelming urge to cry himself. He watched as she slowly faded, becoming more and more transparent until she was gone completely. He quit his job the next day. Skeptics will say these are just tricks of the light, echoes in the urban canyon, or overactive imaginations fueled by a famous ghost story. But for those who have heard the cry of the weeping woman echoing along the San Antonio River, the legend is very, very real. It's a haunting reminder that even in the middle of a bustling city, ancient sorrows can still reach out from the darkness. For our final story, we return to the humid, oppressive atmosphere of the Texas Gulf Coast, to a place with a name that leaves no room for ambiguity: the Texas Killing Fields. This is not a legend or a ghost story. This is a real place, a 25-acre stretch of desolate, overgrown land along Calder Road in League City, just off Interstate 45. Since the 1970s, this small patch of land has been the dumping ground for the bodies of more than 30 people, mostly young women and girls. And the most terrifying part is that the vast majority of these murders remain unsolved. The I-45 corridor between Houston and Galveston has long been known as the Highway of Hell, due to the sheer number of people who have vanished or been found dead along its length. But the Calder Road fields are the epicenter of this nightmare. It's a place where hope goes to die, a graveyard hidden in plain sight. The story of the fields is not one of a single entity, but of a persistent, lingering evil that has permeated the area for half a century. It began in the early 70s, with a string of disappearances. Teenage girls would vanish, seemingly without a trace. Months, or even years later, their remains would be discovered by children playing, by oil field workers, or by law enforcement conducting a search for yet another missing person. One of the first victims to be found in the fields was 14-year-old Brenda Jones in 1971. A few months later, the body of another girl was found nearby. And then another, and another. The discoveries created a pattern of horror that baffled investigators. The terrain was dense and difficult to search, a perfect place to hide a terrible secret. For years, the cases went cold, leaving families with no answers and a community gripped by fear. Who was doing this? Was it one killer or several? Was it a local or someone just passing through on the highway? The questions mounted, but the answers never came. The atmosphere of the place itself is described by law enforcement and victims' families as profoundly heavy and sorrowful. It's a place where the air is thick with unspoken tragedy. People who have visited the site, now marked with simple white crosses for the victims, report an overwhelming sense of dread. They speak of feeling watched from the dense thicket of trees, of hearing whispers on the wind, and of a coldness that has nothing to do with the temperature. One paranormal investigator who visited the site claimed to have captured an EVP of a young girl's voice saying, "Help me." Another visitor, a father of one of the victims, said that every time he went to his daughter's cross, he would feel a gentle touch on his shoulder, as if she were trying to comfort him. But these moments of sad connection are overshadowed by the sheer darkness of the location. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the Texas killing fields is the fact that the danger may not be over. While many of the murders are attributed to serial killers who were eventually caught and convicted of other crimes, many more remain completely unsolved. The possibility that one or more killers responsible for the atrocities that were never caught and could still be living in the area is a chilling thought. The fields are a stark, brutal reminder of the real monsters that walk among us. They are not supernatural creatures or vengeful spirits from folklore. They are human beings, capable of unimaginable cruelty. The Calder Road fields stand as a quiet, grim monument to their victims and as a terrifying open case file. It is a place where the silence is heavy with the stories of those who can no longer speak, making it arguably the most genuinely disturbing location in all of Texas. From the rage of a wronged spirit on a lonely bridge, to a mother's grief twisted into a terrifying legend, to the silent, watchful lights in the desert, the mournful cries by a city river, and the very real evil lurking in an abandoned field, Texas holds its stories close. The 5 we have explored tonight are just a handful of the unsettling truths and persistent legends that thread through the state's vast landscape. They remind us that no matter how brightly we light our cities or how busy we make our lives, there are still pockets of darkness, places where the veil between our world and another is terrifyingly thin. They remind us that history has a long shadow, and that sometimes, and the sun sets and the silence of the Great Plains takes over, that shadow moves. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the darkness at the heart of Texas. If you have a true, unsettling story of your own you'd like to share, feel free to leave it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed these accounts and wish to hear more, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration of the unexplained. Until next time, stay safe.